Yes. All right. Now it is. Okay. So we're wrapping up, or at least we're getting through Napoleon. He has basically risen to the highest point of power that you possibly can. He's crowned himself emperor. We started seeing him rip apart basically all factions of France at this point and tear it down into the way that he would like it to be. We saw him make a deal with the Pope, right? To make the Pope kind of get back on his side, the Catholic Church get back on his side. We also saw him kind of attack the press. And we did that kind of like, why would he want to attack the press type of thing, right? We talked about how you wouldn't want, if you were a leader, people talking negatively about you or spreading lies or truth if it was bad truth, right? Because sometimes leaders do bad things and they don't want that to get out per se. They want to spin it the way that it works for them. I don't think there's any leader, past, present, or future that wants negative things out there about them, whether it could be good or bad. What's up?
Can you go next door real quick to make sure the sub knows how to do the Mr. Ahern thing?
Sure, I'm only in the middle of videoing.
Yeah, okay.
That's okay. No problem. I'll take care of it. Are you going to stand here?
Oh, I'm trying to. How we all doing?
Good.
There's nobody in there. All right, come back in here.
All right, I'm back.
Hello.
All right, let's start this over. I'll just keep going. I ran out. It's like an extra 30 seconds on there. All right, so as I was saying, we got into the facts that no leader really wants any negative stuff to get out. Even if it's true, they try to put a spin on it, right? And so they want a press that is nice to them. That's the easiest way to put it, okay? Every leader, not just leaders you like, not just leaders I like, not just leaders that your parents like. Every single leader wants that, wants to be able to have good things said about them, whether they've done good or bad, okay? Now we're going to get into, I'm going to give you the opportunity when I get done for you guys to do that next section of notes, which is Napoleon's empire, what he kind of overtook. I don't need to go through that with you. You can look that over. It's very simple. I don't even think I really ask any questions about that per se on the test, but it's pretty simple stuff. I'm going to jump into the European response to Napoleon, okay? There was a response. There's always a response to a leader, okay? So Napoleon's grand empire collapsed almost as quickly as it had been formed. There were two main reasons for his defeat. You're going to want to underline them. The survival of Great Britain and the force of nationalism. The survival of Great Britain and the force of nationalism. Britain's survival was due primarily to its sea power. All right, they had a really good navy, a really strong navy. All right, Napoleon hoped to invade Britain, but the British Navy, the British Navy's defeat of a combined French-Spanish fleet at Trafalgar in 1805 destroyed any idea of an invasion. Napoleon then turned to his continental system to defeat Britain. Underline that, the continental system. The goal of the continental system was to prevent British goods from reaching the European continent. So he figured if he could cut off goods to people, then they would eventually break down, right? If we stop getting food and clothing and these things that we need, eventually we will be a weakened culture. We'll be a weakened country. And then we can't fight. We would lose. Does that make sense? It's a pretty smart idea. It's a pretty shrewd idea. Can he pull it off? Well, I don't know. Let's see. So Napoleon hoped to weaken the British economy by preventing the sale of British goods. But the continental system failed. You should know that. It did not work. It was a good idea, but it didn't work. Allied states resented being told that they could not trade with the British. So think about this. Basically, what he was saying to everyone in the world was, I'm not going to let you trade with them. Well, does everybody have to listen to him? No. All right? Leaders all the time say things that don't get listened to, per se, right? Right now, we have a situation down at our border. According to our leaders, we've heard some say you can come. We've heard others say you can't come. And guess what people are still doing? Whatever they want, right? Because that's what happens, okay? Again, we're not going to get into arguing policy. It's just you are seeing it play out. Just because our country says to another country, don't do that, they do not have to listen. Especially if it's something that they really want to do. Does that make sense? So if I'm a country that wants to trade with Britain, and they have really good goods at the time, which they did, guess who I'm going to trade with? I'm going to trade with Britain. I'm not going to allow Britain allow Napoleon, the French, to dictate what I'm going to do. I'm the leader of this country. I'm going to trade with them. What are you going to do about it? Well, I'm kind of making Napoleon make a decision there, aren't I? He's either going to stop the continental system and realize it failed, or he now has to come after other countries. Not a wise decision sometimes, right? Sometimes that will backfire, okay? So let's see what he ends up doing. So some of these groups began to cheat. New markets in the Middle East and in Latin America gave Britain other outlets for their goods. So he not only does it backfire, it gets worse for Napoleon, because by 1809 to 1810, British exports were at a near record high. So they ended up making more money, right? He drove the British to figure out different ways to make money, and they ended up making more money, right? So sometimes the effects of what you're trying to do that you think are going to be a negative to somebody ends up making them come up with better ways of handling things, right? We think if we build a wall, it might keep people out. Well, we also might find different ways of them still getting it. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, just because you come up with this great idea that you think is a great idea, sometimes it doesn't work out to be a great idea. Sometimes it works out to be a better idea for the other group of people that you were trying to hurt, or that you were trying to stop, or that you were trying to do something against. Does that make sense? Yes? Does anybody not understand what I'm saying there? So the British ended up richer. The French, you should understand this about the British and the French. They hate each other, right? We've talked about this. Here's another thorn in the side of the British and the French, right? This is another wedge that is being kind of driven between them. The second important factor in the defeat of Napoleon was nationalism. Nationalism is, underlined, the unique cultural identity of a people based on common language, religion, and national symbols. Napoleon's spread of the principles of the French Revolution beyond France indirectly brought a spread of nationalism as well. The French aroused nationalism in two ways. First, they were hated as oppressors. Okay, meaning the French rolled into an area and took over and were conquering and were strong. They were basically telling other people, France is better than you. Vive la France, we are better, right? Look at our flag, honor us. Don't you think that people might fire back? Well, we like what we are. We're important, right? And they see how proud France is of what they are. Sometimes that bolsters in other people to say to themselves, well, we should be that proud. All right, that's nationalism. The United States of America, for as long as I've been alive and even longer, has been a very nationalistic culture. You have flags in every classroom, right? USA, when you go to sporting events, that's nationalism. We're proud. We should be, right? I don't know. Some people will say that they're not. That'll be a conversation I would have with somebody. But most of this country would say, if you probably did a questionnaire across the country, if people could answer seriously, they would probably say they're proud of their country. Does that make sense? And when you are proud of your country, you will tend to fight for your country. All right. So the French aroused. First, they were hated as oppressors. The hatred stirred the patriotism of other people in opposition to the French. And second, the French showed people of Europe what nationalism was and what a nation in arms could do. So do we understand that? So they made people not like them by being so bold. Sounds like United States, doesn't it? If you don't know that, a lot of people around the world kind of get mad at the United States because we're so prideful in being the United States. Okay? Oh, look at them. They think they're the best in the world, right? And then what happens is those countries, especially during this time period, do what? Well, we can do what they did, right? We can rise up, we can be powerful, we can be strong, and we should be prideful in what we are. So they kind of set an example, and by setting that example, they ended up hurting themselves because people decided that they would what? Fight back. Make sense? Yes? They realized that they could fight back. All right? So let's keep rolling. So you should be able to tell me the two reasons why he collapsed. The fall of Napoleon. This is an interesting thing. All right, the Russians. The good old Russians refused to remain in the continental system. They just didn't like it. They weren't going to be told what they were going to do. This left Napoleon with little choice but to invade Russia. If he didn't invade Russia, if he didn't put Russia in its place, other countries would do what to Napoleon? What would they do? Would they listen to him? They'd revolt. They'd go against him. Well, they don't have to. Why do we have to? Right? There's this old movie. It's called The Breakfast Club. Did you ever hear of it? It's a really old movie. It's when I was a kid. It came out. And there's this one scene. It's about these kids in detention on a Saturday. That stinks. They're all sitting there in the library, And the one kid gets up and starts walking, and the cocky kid goes, "Sir, if he gets up, we'll all get up. It'll be anarchy." Okay, it's out of my hands, right? It's this concept of, well, if we allow you to do it, guess who else is going to want to do it? She's going to want to do it. And if I allow her to do it, she's going to want it. Do you see what I'm saying? So they had to go after Russia. He had to do it. And it's not going to go well for him. Russia's a big, big, big area with really, really strong-willed people. So let's see what that turns into for Napoleon. So in June of 1812, a grand army of over 600,000 men entered Russia. Underline that number, 600,000. That is a massive number. Massive, okay? Napoleon's hope for victory depended on a quick defeat of the Russian army. But the Russian forces refused to fight. This is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant warfare. Now, you should be saying to yourself right now, Venuto, that is not warfare. They're choosing to not fight. By definition, warfare is what? Fighting, right? But they fought using what did you just do? Their brains. They fought by not listening. It's utterly brilliant what they did here. Remember what I just said about Russia? It's very big. Is it a nice environment, Russia? Does anybody know? What is it? It's a tundra. It's cold. It's freezing, right? And it's just like, some of it is just wasteland, okay? So let's see it's absolutely brilliant, okay? So if you're a military person and you ever study something like this, you would be like, wow, right? Like, wow, good for them. Like, it's pretty intelligent. So let's see what happens. The forces refused to fight. They retreated for hundreds of miles. As they retreated, you can underline this, they burned their own villages and countryside to keep Napoleon's army from finding food. How many men did Napoleon have?
600,000.
Over 600,000 men. A lot of people to feed, right? A lot of horses, a lot of animals, a lot of things that are going on in a 600-person army. And these people decided, we're just going to keep running backwards and burning everything in sight. In the cold. What do you need when you're in the cold? Warmth, shelter, food, right? You're not going to survive. Think about how smart this is. Yeah, it's ruining their country, but they're not losing, right? Keep rolling. When the Grand Army, this is Napoleon's army, finally arrives in Moscow, they found it on fire. That's the main area of Russia, right? Without food or supplies, Napoleon abandoned Moscow and began what was known as the Great Retreat. Please underline this and realize how crazy this is. Less than 40,000 of the original army made it back to Poland. 600,000 dwindled down to less than 40,000. Now, I'm not good at math, but that's somewhere in the realm of what? 560,000 people dying and not really in fighting situations. Just starving to death, freezing to death. That is mind-boggling that he continued on that long. Didn't we learn about, in the beginning of talking about Napoleon, what did he do when he was rising up through the leadership of military? What did he do with his battalion at one point? He left them. He cut ties and ran. And remember I said, well, we might not like it, but sometimes that's a brilliant move. Guess what Napoleon should have done here? He should have left a long time ago. Instead, his ego got the best of him. And he kept pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing forward until, oh my God, he lost 560,000 people. It's insane. It's insane, guys. It's mind-boggling that was even allowed to happen. So, but again, he's the emperor, so he can do whatever he wants. Not very wise. So here we go. This military disaster led to other European states to attacking the French army because now they're weak. Paris was captured in 1814 of March. Napoleon was sent into exile on the island of Elba. You can underline that. Exile means basically imprisoned by himself. The Bourbon monarchy was restored to France, so we see a kingdom, like a monarchy, come back, right? Louis the 18th becomes king. He was the brother of the executed king Louis the 16th. So what do we see? we see this full circle. We started the French Revolution with a king. They didn't want the king. They got rid of the king. A lot of people were killed in the streets with the guillotine. Napoleon somehow rises to power. Napoleon makes some really dumb decisions based on that egotistical power. And who comes back into power? A king. Isn't that interesting how that happens? And the brother of the one that they had already cut his head off. I mean, it's like, why do we study history, guys? Maybe because if we don't, we're going to be doomed to continuously repeat the same dumb mistakes, right? So we see a king. The new king had little support. Interesting. So here we are. And Napoleon was able to slip back into France. Now, remember, he was on an island in exile. So the way that this happened was he had a lot of people that still loved him. And a couple of his military guys went over and they basically rescued him and brought him back. All right? So they didn't kill off all of his followers, if you will. They probably should have if they didn't want to see good old Napoleon rear his ugly head again. So when the troops were sent to capture him, they went over to his side. That's how good of a leader he was. You wonder how he was able to do this stuff. So they sent troops. I'm the king, and I send you to go get him. And they get to him, and they're like, we really like this dude. We're going to fight for him now. Do you understand? So it's pretty interesting. Now, Napoleon again enters Paris in triumph in 1815. Napoleon raised another army. He moved to attack the nearest Allied forces in Belgium at Waterloo in Belgium. And he met a combined British and Prussian army. Here's the Brits again. The Brits, underline this name, the Duke of Wellington. You will definitely see him. He was defeated, and they still can't learn. They again exile him to another island called St. Helena in the South Atlantic. He eventually dies there. Okay? Stomach problems. Got it? Makes sense? Pretty interesting story, right? And obviously we broke that down. There's tons of information about Napoleon. But do we understand his rise to power? Do we understand why he fell from power? A couple of reasons in there, right? Nationalism, right? We went through that. Okay? And then we understand what? The Great Retreat. How he tried to fight Russia and it didn't work out for him. Pretty simple stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. All right? Are we good? Any questions about Napoleon? You sure? How about out there in La La Land? Any questions about Napoleon? All right, here's what I want you to do. Go back into the packet. The first thing I want you to do is read through the section that is called Napoleon's Empire. Napoleon's Empire. Highlight anything of importance, mainly what lands he was over. What was he conquer? What did he conquer? What was he over, okay? And then you can go back through and complete the packet. Meaning answer all the questions. Got it? Understand? Yes, Mr. Venuto. Okay, great, super. Get to work.